Joining us now, making his weekly appearance here on One Bills Live, is the senior producer from NFL Films, also one of the co-hosts on ESPN's NFL Matchup show, is one Greg Cosell joining us. And Greg, I got to say, we were all in for a treat Monday night with what Josh Allen was able to do against the San Francisco 49ers, huh?
The Josh Allen experience, it was pretty awesome Monday night. I thought, and I've seen every snap as a pro, and I probably watched 8 games his last year at Wyoming, and I think I even watched him his previous year at Wyoming. That was the best game I've seen him play. He was so good. And, one of the things, I know we've talked about this, Chris, we know that he can move, and we know he's got a powerful arm. But what is the thing that stood out to me? 2 things. Number one, his accuracy, his ball placement. That's the term I like to use, ball placement or ball location. That was as consistently precise as we've ever seen it. And if he can be at that level, then he's going to be an absolutely special player. And the second thing, I thought his movement, not only out of the pocket, okay, we know he can run out of the pocket as we're seeing him do here, but I thought his movement sort of within the pocket was very controlled, very calm. He did not break down. He did not look frenetic or chaotic. He looked very comfortable moving within the pocket. And those 2 things to me really stood out.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with your second point, because I thought that was the biggest difference in his game, even from some games earlier in the season. Just the poise and the level of calm. It reminded me of the way Aaron Rodgers moves through a game. Just completely like almost flatline, like nothing rattles him no matter what the situation is. That's who he looked like in the game to me.
It's funny you say that, because at halftime on Monday night, I texted my buddy Matt Bowen, who you guys know, and
Right.
obviously my friend from the Matchup show, and I just said to him, I said, that's the best I've ever seen Allen look. He looked in total command. And that, and that's just watching on TV, obviously, but you can see certain things on TV clearly. And he just looked in total command. It looked like he was dictating the action.
Right, 100%. And, not to take anything away from what he and the Bills offense did, and I realized that San Francisco was shorthanded at the corner position. I think 4 of their top 6 corners were either on IR or unavailable for this game due to injury. Were you surprised that the Niners defense didn't try to change things up maybe more significantly than they did? Because it was largely a 4-man rush for a good portion of that game. They tried to send some blitz a little bit in the second half, and then it's almost like they waved the white flag after that.
Well, I'm not a guy who starts to say, here's what a coach should or should have done. Robert Saleh has a very good track record in this league, and he clearly felt this was the best way to play. And by the way, they weren't that shorthanded at corner. Sherman's their left corner. He's back. Verrett's had a really strong year at right corner. Obviously, Deontay Johnson is not their normal slot corner. He'd be 3rd or 4th on that list.
Yeah.
So that was the one position that was, in their mind, probably lacking. But Robert Saleh clearly thought this was the best way to play. They played a ton of zone, and they didn't blitz a lot. And that's the way they chose to play. And obviously, look, Josh made some big-time plays, too. I mean, yes, did he make some really good throws from the pocket? And my absolute favorite one, I think it's his best throw as a pro, to be honest with you, was the dig ball to Gabriel Davis, which I know you know the play I'm talking
Just
about. I
over
thought that
Fred
was his
Warner
best
there,
throw as a pro. But he also made a lot of plays where he got outside the pocket. I mean, it wasn't as if they put no pressure on him at all. He just made some throws now on the move that were pretty special.
So when that happens, and, he's 23 of 25 against zone coverage, and earlier in the season he was getting criticized for not being as effective against zone coverage. And that was a point where after the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, people started playing more zone against him, and his numbers dropped off precipitously. That was not the case Monday night. So
no,
I realized that, Pittsburgh plays a fair amount of zone themselves, but they have a pass rush to go with it. So that's a much different animal than what he just saw this past Monday, correct?
Yeah, but their pass rush will be lacking a little bit with Bud Dupree out. So, and by the way, just to transitioning to Pittsburgh a little bit, we know that Spillane is out. We know that Vince Williams is out. I mean, when they're in their nickel with 5 DBs, their linebackers are likely to be Avery Williamson, who's a solid pro, and then Marcus Allen, who was a safety at Penn State, who they basically have made a linebacker. So, there's questions about Pittsburgh's defense, and we know Highsmith gets the majority of the snaps now opposite T.J. Watt, who, by the way, is phenomenal, and he's a guy you got to deal with. But their defense is a little depleted. It's not the same Steelers defense from 2, 3, 4 weeks ago.
And, I was looking at some stats on ESPN Stats and Info, and Josh has been very good against blitz pressure this year. I think his completion percentage is up around 67%, somewhere in there. Is this just an example of maybe the best pressure team in the league, and might those numbers be misleading in light of the caliber of a pass rush that he's seeing this week?
Well, my guess is he'll still get pressure from the Steelers. They'll still blitz. I don't think they'll change their character. Obviously, players are different, but I don't believe they'll change who they are. And then we'll see. I mean, obviously, Josh does move. It's. I'm one of those guys that I don't like to make, Chris, statements about a guy's whole career, based on a game or, whether it's negative or positive. I mean, I thought he played far and away the best game of his career, and there were so many positive things to take away from it. But you'd be hard-pressed to say he's going to play like that every single week. Really, no quarterback does. But the improvement has been dramatic. To me, as I said, the number one thing was he looked in command. And that's what you want to see, particularly when you face pressure. When you face a pressure team, there are going to be snaps when they win the down. That's just, the Steelers are good. They've been a really good defense for a long time. They're going to win some downs. He might get sacked. He might run out of the pocket and maybe make a bad throw. That could happen because their defense is really good. So we'll see. But Josh is, I think just mentally he's really improved. You just get a sense that he's in control of what he's seeing.
Maybe give me a timeline of your observations of the evolution of this Bills passing game, because we've seen Brandon Beane, who just got a contract extension yesterday. He kind of has assembled these pieces for the coaching staff to develop, and we've kind of seen the puzzle come together, the investment in the offensive line, adding Beasley and Brown, and then Diggs via trade this past offseason along with Gabriel Davis in the draft and the like, Zach Moss, etc. I don't know if anybody anticipated that the identity of this team would be a passing attack that throws it 40 times a game. But here we are, and it's working really, really well. So maybe just walk me through your thoughts as to the starting point, the midway point, and where we are now with the evolution of this passing offense and where it leaves you on the Bills right now at 9-3.
Well, I think that if you want to be a pass-first offense in today's NFL, I think your quarterback has to have movement traits. I think it's very hard to be a pass-first offense with a pocket quarterback because the defense will win too many downs and your quarterback will have no parachute. He'll get sacked or he'll be forced to throw too many balls away. So I think that that's one thing I would say. Secondly, I would say that ideally, you probably don't want to do this every week. It depends on the opponent. I still think they would like to be able to run the ball. Whatever that means, that's a week-to-week thing and a case-by-case basis. But I still think they would like to run the football more and better than they do now. That's not to say they're going to become a volume-running team. I don't think that will happen because of the quality of the quarterback and the kind of quarterback he is and the receivers. I mean, look, they apparently have hit the jackpot with Gabriel Davis. I mean, I watched him coming out of college, and they do a lot more work than I do, obviously, because I don't get to sit down with kids, talk to them. But I remember watching him in college, and all he did was line up on the left side of the formation, literally 2 yards from the sideline, and run about 2 routes. So obviously, in their study of him and in meeting him and talking with him, something clicked. And I keep hearing from people who up there that he's a really smart kid. So, obviously they hit the jackpot with him because he was not a first or second round pick. So the team has evolved into a passing team, Chris. I don't know if they started this pandemic off season with the idea that they were going to be a passing team.
So speaking of the run game, let's flip it over to the Steelers because volume in the run game has been sorely absent there. Nobody
Oh
has
my
run it.
God.
Nobody
Yeah.
has run it less than the Steelers since week 7 in the entire league, which just runs so counter to what Pittsburgh has been for so many years. And last week, I mean, that might have been rock bottom, Greg. I mean, they ran it. They had 14 runs against Washington. 7 of them didn't gain a yard. And there are some plays where and I'm sure you've seen this on the tape, they've got 7 blockers against 5 defenders. They still can't get a yard. It defied logic, which is why Tomlin was out of his skull after the game.
No, and that's the thing is they literally it's easy for me, you, whoever to say, well, you got to run the ball. And theoretically that's true, but they are not moving anybody off the ball with their offensive line. When you watch the tape, they literally don't move anybody. And James Conner, I guess, is due to be back this week, correct?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, he had a stretch of about 4 games, maybe week 3 to week 6, somewhere around there, where he averaged about 18 carries a game. They had a pretty efficient run game. I think he had over 100 yards in 3 of those 4 games. It looked like they had a pretty balanced team. But then all of a sudden the run game stopped, and now they really don't even try to run it. And their passing game is basically all short stuff with the occasional deep shot. I mean, what's his name? I hate it. Can't believe I just said that. That's not what I wanted to say. But Ben Roethlisberger has not been sacked in 5 or 6 games because everything is quick. The ball comes out. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chris, had 7 receptions for 28 yards last week. I mean, that's just unheard of for a wide receiver in this league, especially in the way the passing game is used in today's NFL.
So why is that the approach? Because it begs the question, there's a couple of things that could be at issue here. They might be worried about protection and keeping Ben upright, but I mean, for how many years did we see Ben just shrug off pass rushers and stiff-arm guys and extend plays and chuck it 50 yards down the field to Antonio Brown in the back of the end zone? That doesn't exist anymore. He's at his lowest yards per attempt number in his entire career. It's 6.42, and they're just throwing all this short stuff all over the yard. And, okay, you want to get it out quick, I get it, but it just doesn't seem to be an effective means to an end for an offense.
No, it's not correlating to points. That's the issue. I mean, ultimately, you want to score points. But, no, that's what their offense has become. And then they'll take the occasional deep shot to Washington or to Claypool. But for the most part, everything is quick. I know they keep stats as to how quickly the ball comes out in terms of seconds. Roethlisberger's number 1 in the league. That's what their offense has evolved into. They, as you said, and the numbers reflect it, they really don't even try to run the ball. So, again, I think it's hard to sustain an offense in which you're asking your quarterback to drop back 45 or 50 times by choice. That's, to me, again, everything's relative, but I think that's a hard deal.
And I don't think this short passing game for Pittsburgh is a great matchup against the Bills. And I'll just throw a couple of next-gen stats at you to back it up, but you can tell me what you see on tape just in terms of Buffalo defending the short pass. They do rank in the top 5 in completion percentage allowed on short pass attempts. 73.3% completion, which sounds like a high completion rate, but I guess for the high percentage passes, that's a pretty good number if they're in the top 5. What have you seen from the Bills in defending short passes that might make that supposition valid in terms of defending what the Steelers like to do with the passing game?
Well, I don't think I can answer that with one thing and say, hey, here's what they do against the short passing game. I mean, I think the Bills, for the most part, I think that number one, I think their defense has improved as the year has progressed. And I tell you, if I could, and this doesn't answer your question specifically, but
that's okay.
I said to myself, I wanted to talk about this player when I spoke to you on Friday, because the Bills have basically morphed into a nickel defense. Taron Johnson does not come off the field hardly ever. And I think that he has played really well over the last month or so. I don't know how they've charted him. I can't sit and chart every single play. And I don't know if when you talk to Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott, I don't know if they mention him. But I think that watching the tape, I feel like he's become a really good slot corner. I think he's very physical in the run game. He's aggressive. He's competitive. I think that since they don't play a ton of man coverage, it's not a man-based defense. It's not as if he's matching up all the time in man coverage.
Right.
But I think he does a really good job in zone. I think he has a really good feel for it. He's just a player that, like I said, when I watched the tape, I said, I got to make sure I talk about Teron Johnson because I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because he was having a rough go of it very early in the season to the point where they were ready to replace him in the lineup with Cam Lewis, an undrafted kid out of UB up here that had a really good training camp. And he actually started a game in his place and then had a wrist injury. And Teron came back in, and when he got his second chance, he didn't miss. I mean, he made the most of it. To your point about how he's been playing since he's been back in the lineup. So good on him for making the most of it.
They play nickel to 12 personnel to 2 tight ends. They don't really play base very often at all these days. And we saw what they did this week with Milano back. They played Klein pretty much on first and second down, and Milano came in as the nickel linebacker on third down. And by the way, Klein is another guy that I think over the last month has played really, really good football. And, he's a veteran who's been in the league. I remember watching him with Carolina, with New Orleans. He's just a solid player. He's not a superior athlete, so you never think of Klein, as being one of the top 10 linebackers. But he's one of those guys. He'll end up playing as long as he wants to play because he's just one of those guys. He's just a good football player, understands the game. Probably, again, I'm not watching every play, but my guess is he's very disciplined and probably doesn't miss many assignments.
Yeah, lunch pail player for sure. Greg, we're out of time, but thanks for breaking it down for us. Enjoy that game on Sunday night. We'll look for you on the matchup show this weekend.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks so much.
All right, that's Greg Cosell, senior producer of NFL Films and co-host of the NFL Matchup show on ESPN. You can watch those early in the morning on the weekends on ESPN and ESPN2.